Hi, welcome back. This is Surya. This video is a part of a series on static bar charts where we will explore different points in detail. Before we begin, make sure you have watched my earlier videos, Understanding Bar Graphs, How to Describe Static Bar Charts, and Tense Usage in Graphs. The links to these videos are given in the description. Now let's move to today's focus. One of the biggest challenges for many IELTS test takers in static bar charts is knowing how to begin the body paragraphs. With line graphs or dynamic bar charts, it's easier because you can simply follow the years in order. But with static bar charts, there is no time reference or sometimes just a single point in time. And this makes it harder for many students to decide on a clear starting point. So in this video, we'll focus on three things: how to start body paragraphs clearly, how to order information from the highest to the lowest, and how to use comparatives and superlatives effectively. These 3 points will help you write logical and well-structured paragraphs. Let's get started. When describing static bar charts, choosing the right vocabulary is very important. The language we use here is different from the vocabulary in line graphs or dynamic bar charts. In line graphs, we often talk about trends over time. Words like increased, declined, fluctuated, rose sharply, and so on. But in static bar charts, there is no time reference, or sometimes just a single point in time. So we describe data by comparing sizes, ranking categories, and highlighting extremes. That's why we need superlatives, comparatives, and sequencing words. For the top and bottom categories, we use superlatives such as the most popular, the least popular, the highest figure, the lowest figure, the most common, or the least common. And you can also say the leading category. For the middle categories, we use comparatives like slightly higher, slightly lower, much higher, much lower, significantly higher, significantly lower, and so on. If values are almost the same, you can say roughly the same as. And to connect your ideas smoothly, you should use sequencing words such as this was followed by, meanwhile, by contrast, or in comparison. These words make your description more fluent and logical. Now, let's begin with this bar graph. Before writing, we need the right vocabulary in place. Pause the video and take a moment to understand the graph. Now that we have seen the vocabulary, let's look at some sentence structures we can use. Look at these sentence structures and think about how you can use them to describe this type of bar chart. For example, to start with the highest value, for boys, we can say, the most popular activity was sports at 28%, or the highest figure was for sports at 28%. To move to the next category, we can say, this was followed by going to the park with 25%, or the second most common activity was going to the park at 25%. For the middle values, notice what boys preferred. The figures for playing computer games and watching DVDs were the same, at 15% each. And finally, for the lowest category, we use superlatives again. By contrast, art and craft was the least favored activity among boys, at only 7%. Or, the lowest figure was recorded for art and craft at 7%. These structures are flexible. You don't need to use all of them. Just choose the ones that match the data in your bar chart. Notice how these structures create a clear flow from the highest to the lowest. Let's see how these structures work in practice. Here is how we can apply them to the boys' data. We can begin with a superlative. The most popular activity among boys was sports at 28%. Then we move logically to the next, going to the park with 25%. For the middle values, we show equality, playing computer games and watching DVDs, both at 15%. Next, we highlight a small difference using a comparative phrase. Books were slightly less preferred at 10%. And finally, we end with a superlative for the lowest category, art and craft, at only 7%. Notice how we avoided repeating the word popular by using alternatives like preferred and favoured. We also used a variety of sentence structures. Some start with the category, others with linking words like meanwhile or by contrast. This keeps the writing more varied and formal. Now let's see how we can combine these sentences into a short paragraph. The first sentence uses a connector, followed closely by, to join two activities, sports and going to the park. This avoids two short, repetitive sentences and creates a compound structure. The second sentence combines computer games and DVDs with books, using the connector while. This makes it a complex sentence, showing contrast. The last sentence ends with a clear contrast phrase. By contrast, art and craft was the least favored. This paragraph flows logically, varies vocabulary, and uses both compound and complex sentences. That's exactly what IELTS examiners look for in lexical resource and coherence and cohesion. Now let's practice with the girls' data. Pause the video, review the sentence structures we discussed earlier, and try writing a short paragraph on your own. Remember, don't just copy the same structures you used for boys. Aim for some variety. Here are some hints to guide you. Begin with the highest category, art and craft, at 25%. Then describe the next two, books and DVDs, both at 17%. You can use phrases like both or equally common. For the middle value, mention computer games at 15%. A good phrase here is slightly lower than books and DVDs. Finally, end with the lowest figures, sports and going to the park, both at 12%. Once you have finished, compare your answer with the model paragraph. Here is the model answer for the girls' activities. Notice the first sentence. Art and craft emerged as the leading activity among girls at 25%. Instead of repeating the most popular, we have used emerged as the leading activity for variety. Next, books and DVDs shared the second position with identical figures of 17%. This avoids repeating common and introduces a fresh way to show equality. For the middle, playing computer games was slightly less popular than reading books or watching DVDs at 15%. Finally, in comparison, the lowest figure was recorded for sports and going to the park at 12% each. Here, we replaced least favored with the lowest figure was recorded to avoid repeating the wording from the boys' description. This paragraph flows logically from the highest to the lowest, uses alternatives from the sentence structures we learned earlier, and avoids repeating the same words. That's exactly the kind of lexical variety and sentence flexibility IELTS examiners look for. So that completes our practice with the children's activities graph. We looked at both boys and the girls' data. and we saw how to move logically from the highest to the lowest, use superlatives and comparatives effectively, and avoid repeating the same vocabulary by choosing alternatives. This practice shows how clear structures and varied expressions can make your description more accurate and high-scoring. In the next lesson, we'll move on to another static bar chart, the transport preferences graph, where we will focus more on comparing across countries. Thank you so much for watching this lesson on describing static bar charts. In this video, we focused on the children's activities graph and learned how to start body paragraphs clearly, move from the highest to the lowest, and use superlatives and comparatives with a range of vocabulary. Stay tuned for the upcoming videos where we will explore more strategies to describe static bar charts in detail. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next lessons. See you in the next video.